Welcome to the next episode of Expert Showcase. Today we have a very special guest. We have Caprice Hogg, an amazing artist, and she's going to talk to you all about sharing your passion for art and for life. And for those of you business owners, you need to stick around because what Caprice has learned throughout her life and through the struggles is going to be very important to you and your business and help you grow your business and your personal life immediately. Hey, Caprice, how you doing today?
Great, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
How are you?
Epic, thanks. I am so looking forward to having you on the show today. Like I said, folks, Caprice is an epic artist. She reached out and we've been talking for a while, and she said, "Hey, I've got some great stuff to share." I looked at her art and I'm like, "Geez, if if what you have to share is anything even close to the epic art that you produce, we've got to have you on the show." And then after reading her story and understanding more about Caprice, what I realized is that she was right. She's got something to share that can be applicable to anybody, whether they're an artist, a business owner, a coach, a consultant, an entrepreneur. She's got a great story to share with you today. So as you all know, we have two parts to our show. The first part is the heroine's journey. And this is where we're going to hear all about the beginning, the turning point, and the aftermath, where Caprice started, where that change in that turning point happened, and where she is today. So Caprice, give our viewers a quick overview of your heroine's journey.
Well, I guess to begin, I should let you know that when I was 2 years old, I was diagnosed with a form of muscular dystrophy. So that obviously kind of helped to shape how I grew up, how my childhood was, and it kind of, now that I'm in my 40s, I was kind of thinking back as to all these events that happened in my childhood and how that created who I am today as far as an artist and the situations I wound up in, being at home and coloring and doing so many creative things as a child because of my not being able to walk and run and play and jump like all my friends at school could do. That all kind of sent me in a certain direction, and I strongly, strongly believe that's why I am a painter today, just thanks to all the experiences I had as a child that weren't the norm that most of my friends were, the lives they were living. It was totally different than everyone else that I knew, for sure.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah,
so
so that's how I think I began when I was just very, very, very small.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're so inspirational because a lot of times today people have this belief that they want to be something that they're just not. I'm not about putting limits on anybody. What I am all about is saying, look, if you were made to do something, if you were born to do something, why not figure out what that is and live it to the fullest? Just like like you said, you didn't have a lot of experiences that kids would call normal, the running, the jumping, the walking, the playing, and the going out, but you turn that instead of letting it control you for your entire life, you turn that into a passion for art, and you found what you were born to do, what you were meant to do, what you were designed to do. It's kind of like Nick Vujicic, who was born with no arms and no legs, and instead of letting that control him, he
Right.
became a great inspirational, motivational public speaker. So I can't wait to dive completely into this. Let's go all the way back to, and let's start off with the beginning. And tell us a little bit about the beginning. Tell us, let's start a little bit about, kind of what you were going through when you were a child.
Well, like I say, I had a very, very supportive family, which was huge in my development because when my mom first was told about my diagnosis, it was a very grim picture that they told her when I was 2, and at that point I was still bouncing in the crib and still able to walk, and I wasn't in a wheelchair until I was about 11 years old, so it was a progressive illness, and when she first was diagnosed, the day I was diagnosed, this young intern doctor came up to her and said, "Whatever you do, don't raise her any different than you raised your other children." And so my mom took that and ran with it. So, and I was very fortunate. I was the baby of the family. So I had two older brothers and an older sister who kind of worshipped me. I was like 10 years, I came 10 years later, so they were teenagers, and they took me everywhere. So I had really a very blessed childhood. It was a blast. I look back on it not with, you know, sadness, even though I was going to the children's hospital every year. But I had a good time with my brothers and my sisters and all their friends, and went to all their parties and all their crazy adventures I went on. And my mom and dad never raised me any differently than they did my siblings. And so I was always brought up to know I could do anything I wanted, and I could be just like everybody else. And I never really thought of myself as different, even though I couldn't do everything that, as I said, the running and the skipping and the jumping. But that wasn't an issue because I was so busy with everything else in my life that I had a very fulfilled childhood all along. So
Yeah,
I never did without, that's for sure.
yeah, and I think that's an epic point, and that's what a lot of people need to realize. It's interesting the way you put it because you admit that your parents didn't quote unquote treat you any differently than anybody else, but
Mhm.
technically, and I'll say technically, they did. I shouldn't say they did. Most parents would force kids to go outside and run and play and jump, or at least today in the world today, especially
Right.
parents with all the. So let me ask you that question before I make an assumption. For your brothers and sisters, were your parents an active things like saying, "Hey, go outside and play," or did they? I guess that's the best way to put that question. Were your parents the type of parents who wanted your brothers and sisters to go outside and play and kind of nudge them and said, "Hey, why don't you go out and play?"
Well, I think because, as I said, my siblings were teenagers. They were out and about and running and doing all their things anyways, and I just tagged along everywhere they went. They literally took me everywhere that they went. So, and I was going wherever they were going. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just did whatever they did, and whether they were snowmobiling, and we had a boat, and we went out water skiing and swimming, and we were always active. Our family was always active.
Yeah.
It was just we were as a family out doing. So it just never crossed my mind, I guess, to be any other way.
And that I think is that I believe is the real key and one of the key learnings from your beginning. We always like to talk about the things that people learned from different or teaching and or learn. So I'm going to say what I believe is a teaching, and I'm going to ask you kind of what you learned. I believe one of the teachings that comes from that is the fact of your perception was that your parents, and I'm not saying they were or weren't, but the perception, your perception, how you viewed it, because our perception is reality, is that your parents weren't treating you any different than they treated your brothers and sisters, even though you were doing different things. And I think that is so key. Fact of the matter is that, whether you're a coach, a consultant, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a speaker, or you're trying to motivate people, it's about the perception that people have of not being treated differently versus versus I'll say a reality that they would have had to have treated you at least a little bit. If they were parents who pushed their kids to go out and play when they were young, they would have had to treat you at least a little bit differently because they knew you couldn't go out and run around. I mean, it's kind of, but they pushed you to do what you could do. So, what was your learnings from
That's
that time as you look back now? What did you learn from your beginning and that you either have applied in your life or continue to apply today?
Well, I was always encouraged to do what I could do. And like I said, my mom and dad owned businesses, so I did get a lot of my business credentials from learning from through their experiences. And as a little girl, going down to the stores on Sundays and filling the thread racks because they owned a fabric store. And so my mom was a custom seamstress, so she taught both me and my sister how to be custom seamstresses. So I grew up with the creative aspects as well. So I was always making my own clothes and designing and, sewing at all times, putting materials together, fabrics together. So we definitely had the creative side. We had the business side. As I said, we were always out in nature. So I had all of these types of things in my that I grew up with that have had a huge impact on who I am as an adult. And I just, and like I say, because my mom and my dad were in that line of business, the creativity part was always there. And that was something, even though I couldn't walk, being creative was something very easy that I could do and get my hands on. And my hands were always busy, even though I never painted when I was young. Painting was not, a part of my realm at all, believe it or not. And art was not, when I first met my art teacher, I couldn't tell you the difference between a Da Vinci or Michelangelo. I didn't know anything about the masters, nothing. That was just not in our realm whatsoever. But even though I had been creative for my whole life, so that was a big learning curve when I did get into the art world. And yeah, thank God
Wow.
that exists.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that the turning point is going to be meeting your art teacher. So before we get to that and talk about how that, what you got from that experience, before getting into art, you sound like you had a great childhood, sounded like you had a lot of fun, sounded like you were loved. What were you doing before you got into art?
Well, you know, uh, and I just want to backtrack one little bit here before I answer that question. In that, yeah, I had a pretty phenomenal childhood, but the fact of the matter is that I was a disabled person. I was in a wheelchair when I was 11. When I was 13, I had major back surgery, which didn't go very well. And so all of a sudden, the perfect world wasn't so perfect. And of course, you hit your puberty and all those peer pressure and everything. So that was the kind of part of my journey which wasn't so rosy and wasn't so good. And reality did kind of hit. And even though I had a fabulous family, everything wasn't so great at that period. And I don't know, do you know about a fellow named Rick Hansen down there? I know I'm from Canada, and he's one of our Canadian heroes up here. He traveled around the world in his wheelchair, and he's very known here in Canada, but I don't know if he's known down in the States. But I wound up meeting him when I was 13, and that was one of those life-changing moments that I know you'd be interested in hearing about, because he had traveled, as I said, around the world and raising money for people who had had spinal cord injury like he had, and he was also raising awareness for people who had a disability. And he was the one that first told me that no matter what, just because you're disabled, it doesn't mean you can't do whatever you want to do in life. So yeah, he was a big motivator for me. And when I was 13 and I was in pain and things were not going so well, that's when, as the stars lined up, I wound up meeting him. And of course, I did not want to even go, because the last thing in the world I wanted to do was go meet some guy in a wheelchair. I had nothing to do with disabled people, and I was really angry. And my mom insisted. She said, look, you gave your word to the city that you would go and present him with an award from the city. You've got to go. So I dragged myself down there, dragged me, and he wheeled up on stage in his wheelchair, and I burst into tears. And I just sat there the whole time. I didn't say a word to him. I just sat there and cried and cried and cried. And it was just one of those moments that I was so not expecting, and the dam burst, and just I couldn't control my emotions whatsoever. And I had done a lot of charity work up to that point, and that night the fellow from the Herald, the Lethbridge Herald, had phoned me, and he said, look, I've got this really fantastic photo of you with Rick Hansen. Can I put it in the paper? I'm like, well, yeah, sure. Why are you phoning me? You've taken my photo before. You've never phoned me. And he's like, but Caprice, you're crying in the photo. I'm like, so whatever. Like, yeah, just do what you got to do. Go ahead. And he the next morning, my teacher comes up to me at the school, and he hands me the newspaper, and I'm all across the whole top front page of the Lethbridge Herald is my picture of me and Rick Hansen, and I'm just bawling my eye, and it was just, I was so embarrassed. And then of course now it's one of my biggest treasures, that photograph, because it's just such a significant moment in my life, and that really is the moment that changed everything for me. And I knew then that I could definitely, just because I was in a wheelchair didn't mean that I couldn't do anything I wanted. So
Wow, that's an amazing story, and it really, it does, serve as, it sounds like it serves as one of your turning points. The interesting thing, do you mind me asking why did you have you looked back to that moment to figure out and to dig deep to understand why you just the dam burst and you started to cry?
well, I think, up until that point, I don't know if I'd even really looked at my disability. As I said, my parents did a fabulous job of treating me just like everybody else, and that I wasn't any different. And then all of a sudden, the it struck that, what, there is a lot of things that I can't physically do in this world and that are not an option. And then, all those, like I said, the peer pressure hits, and then I realized, geez, my sister just got married, and she walked down the aisle with a long white dress, and all those things are going in my head that I'll never get married and I'll never have that, and all, like, all those things that as a 13-year-old girl you start thinking, God, that these things are never a possibility. And then when I met Rick Hansen, all of a sudden it was there saying like, yeah, the world is here for me as well, so it did definitely open my eyes to what was out there for me, and
Yeah,
I'm very
well,
grateful for that experience.
that's amazing. And it's, whether you're a 13-year-old girl, a 13-year-old boy, a 30, 40, or 70-year-old person, and I think the feelings are all, I believe the feelings are all the same. People look at and they want to do something. Maybe they didn't know they wanted to do it, but, at some point they have this feeling they want to do something. They look at their own limitations, and whether it be physical, mental, emotional, they look at their own limitations and they have that moment of I'm never going to be able to do this. So the question then for you is, okay, so you looked at
Yeah,
Rick and you said, okay, it's a possibility. Was it just that one moment? Was
yeah.
it that easy in your brain to say, okay, I can put all these feelings aside? Or was it, okay, I see him, I know it's a possibility, but I still worry about it and I still am not sure it's going to happen? And, did the feeling continue, or was it literally that one moment, boom, okay, I know everything is possible?
Well, I think it was a process for sure, and that is a good point. Because and I grew up in a small town, so I had started school like when in kindergarten with a group of kids, and all the way to grade 9, I was with the same group of kids, and they had kind of seen me go from still walking when I was 5 to then going into a wheelchair and then having this back surgery and then being sick, and I was off school for almost a year, and I was in pain and all these things. And then, like I said, I was in that dark place where I had the chip on my shoulder and the world owed me kind of thing, and I wasn't the happy-go-lucky person that I was. And so these kids that I went to school with had seen me all through that. And then once I hit high school, which was grade 10, I went to the school in our small town, and of course it was on 2 floors, and they were supposed to have put in an elevator for me. They knew I was coming and everything, and then when I got there was no elevator. So I wound up having to go to school in the next town, which was a city, and it was the best thing ever for me because all of a sudden I walked into this big, huge school with tons of students, and I kind of was able to have a fresh start with all new people. Nobody there knew me, and I walked in there with my head held high and a big smile on my face, and I was just that, and I had a new start, a fresh palette, and that was just a great moment for me. And I kind of, because it was such a humongous school, and there was all these kind of wild kids there too, with like punk, at the time it was punk rock with all their wild hairs, hairdos and purple hair, and I thought nobody is ever going to notice me. I'm going to blend in completely, like, just because I'm in a wheelchair, that's nothing compared to some of these kids, right? So I just thought I was going to be one of the crowd, which was exactly what I needed at the time. And so I think that's when it really clicked in for me, that whole change that you're talking about. So there was a few years there where it was just the transition there, and then I got my fresh start. So that was a big help for me.
That's amazing. Now, the one question is, because I grew up in a small town as well. So when you found out, go back to that moment that you found out, you went in, and you found out you weren't going to be able to go to the high school with the kids that you had grown up with. And let's pull back the covers. Were you happy or were you upset when you found out? Do you remember the emotion you went through when you found that out?
It was a yeah, very emotional time because it was a comfort zone and something I'd known all these years, people I'd been with all those years. And to all of a sudden go into the complete unknown and have to make it on my own and not know anybody or have any comfort zone whatsoever, it was a big, I didn't realize it was going to be great, obviously, but I was trying to make the decision because there was the options of them putting in all these different lifts, and I just didn't want to do it because I felt that there were those moments where if they put in these other lifts instead of an elevator, then all of a sudden I did feel very disabled because I was different than everybody else, and it was just, I really stood out in the crowd, and it was just a horrible feeling. I felt like such a loser, having to wait for the teachers to come and help me get to my class and all that sort of thing. So I had no independence whatsoever. So yeah, leaving that behind was definitely a good moment for me, and I'm definitely glad I made that decision.
Well, and so two things before we get into the aftermath. One, I bring it up because it's good to hear that you didn't go in right away liking the decision and liking what was about to happen. Because so many
Yeah,
times people pretend like, oh, well, I knew this was going to happen. And I liked it from day one. And it's nice to have somebody who's real who says, hey, I really didn't think I was going to like this. And, I was really resistant to it, but I got over it. And the thing that I want our viewers to really hear and understand is the fact you don't have to like something. You don't have to like a decision right at the beginning, but if you can find the positives in it and find
right.
the good in it, then you can get over. And the second thing, and I think you did great. I think your decision was great. But didn't you ever think about just basically, dating the captain of the football team, just having him carry you up and down between floors and between floors
No,
into
that wasn't
classes?
even my realm. Like he wouldn't even know who I was. Like he wouldn't want nothing to do with me. So it was like I was in that place,
Okay,
like
so if the captain of the Caprices, if the captain of the high school football team and the Caprice of the high school she was going to go to is watching, reach out and tell her reach out and remind her that you actually knew that she existed, that she was there, and now she's blushing. You're blushing, huh? Oh, this is great. This is great TV, folks. So now that we've
there
talked about the turning point, and I've embarrassed the living daylights out of Caprice
you
because she.
go.
I think we should go ahead and get into the aftermath because I think that
All right.
the interesting
Yeah.
part here is that you've gone through this transition. You've gone through this time where, you gave this award and you let the dam burst, and that's when you started to realize, and then you got into high school, and it really started to hit you because whether they did or they were going to have to put an elevator and they didn't, then you had to go through all of these changes. At what point at what point during this process did you find this love of art, and did you turn this into your life passion and go from wherever you were and allow everything to say, look, this is the one thing that I am super good at, that I can do better than a lot of people.
Well, of course, for me, it wasn't like a straight road to get to there either because I wound up after high school, I took half a degree of psychology at the University of Lethbridge, and I was enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, I realized, you know what, this is not what I meant to be doing. I need to take a break. The university's not working. I was living on my own in Lethbridge, and my parents had moved away, and it was just like I was stressing out from the pressures of school and everything. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just take a semester off, go, and I moved back home with my parents, and I subletted my apartment. And when I went back to register for the following semester, they said, oh no, you're not registered at the university anymore, so you can't come back. So I said, that's it. This is not what I meant to be doing. I'm going to do something else. So it's like, just for the moment, all right, see ya. And so then I kind of floated for a year, and I'm like, my mom and dad were very understanding, and I said, there's something I'm meant to be doing, and I'm just not sure what it is, but I just know. And everybody else who knew me thought I had lost my marbles because I'm like, just black. I just know there's something I'm meant to be doing. And almost a year later to the day, this lady came out to visit my mom, and she took one look at me and she's like, you know, Caprice, I'm not painting right now. I've been a professional painter for 30 years and I've been a teacher for 30 years. I want to teach you to paint. And I said, no, Karen, I have no talent. I can't draw. So thanks very much, but you know, it's not for me. I'm telling you, I've tried painting and it's not for me. I'm creative, but I'm not a painter. Caprice, I really want to teach you to paint. And I said, well, okay, Karen, I'll take you up on it just because I have nothing better to do right now. Honestly. And if she was here, she would tell you that that's exactly what I said. And so then she, first of all, she was very, very strict teacher. So she started teaching me all the theories and the rules of fine art. And it was a lot of heavy duty, boring theory. And then finally she saw she was losing me. So she handed me the paintbrush. And from the first moment she handed me that paintbrush, there was no turning back. It was there from that moment on, and I never stopped. And then a few months later, I went to the art store. They had a big, huge sale at the art store in Calgary, and I bought $800 worth of supplies because this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life. This was it. And I never stopped since. And that, you know, it's been 20 years, you know, and I'm still at it. So,
Oh, I'm laughing because it's like the old adage, you know, you burn the bridges or burn the boats. It's like, you know, you sail to the new world and then you set the boats on fire and send them back out and go, hey, there's no turning back. There's no
yeah,
turning back
exactly.
now.
And that's it.
And,
Yeah. For
and then when
me,
it,
that was,
yeah, and you
yeah,
know it's so interesting because you know you felt there was something more. And I always tell a story, you know, whether you believe in God, the universe, any higher power than you, I believe that that higher power, you know, uses both feathers and two by fours to end up teaching you and taking you in the right direction where you should be. So, you know, the feather usually is the gentle nudge to say, I feel like I should be doing something else. Usually the two by four is, you know, some major drastic thing. So you're lucky. You probably got hit by a one by three, not a two by four, so it didn't hurt as bad, or maybe a padded two by four,
yeah,
meaning you felt that
yeah.
you were supposed to be going someplace else. The school magically didn't have you registered, which is kind of like, okay, here's your, you know, kind of a little bit more, you know, stiffer nudge, and then a teacher
Oh,
just
big
wouldn't.
push. Yeah,
Yeah, and then a teacher just wouldn't take no for an answer. Um, you know,
yeah.
it's so the interesting part is, and you said at first, you resisted because you didn't think you could do it. Now, here's what I find interesting. You've overcome so much in your life. Why did you think, what was leading you to think you couldn't be an artist after you've overcome so many other challenges in your life?
Well, ironically, when I was young, my mom had hired this woman to stay with me during the summers because my mom and dad owned businesses and whatnot. So they were working full time. So she had hired a lady to come and stay with me during the summertime when I was off school. And she had just taken an art course at college. And so she was a painter. And she said, why don't you teach Caprice to paint? And I was probably 12 or something. And so my mom went out and bought me all the watercolors and all the paints and everything, and I never didn't I had no interest in it, and I don't know, it just never came to fruition. And then I had art teachers, you know, along the way that just didn't give me very good grades in school in my art classes. So when I did hit high school and university, I never took a single art course ever that I didn't have to because I was not good at painting. So it just was the way it all had all unfolded. But my mom knew that when I was little, like, I'm gonna go buy Caprice all these supplies, these paints and everything, and maybe it was the watercolors. I don't know because I work in oils now, so you know that's part of it.
Yeah,
Oils are pretty phenomenal. Yeah.
yeah, it definitely could be the medium. Folks, Caprice and I during the pre-show probably, you know, it was definitely a lot longer because we were talking art because I'm a frustrated, not artistic artist. But that's beside what this is a show, conversation for a whole different show. But here's what I find interesting. You know, and I talk about a lot in my presentations and my keynotes, you know, the fact that some well-meaning parents steer their kids in directions that they shouldn't go. Others see the light inside of a child, and I really do see what that child is supposed to do and try and steer them in that direction. You know, I find it interesting that your mom was steering you in the direction of art, and now after your, heavy resistance back for all these many years, now you're an epic accomplished artist. So one of the last questions I want to ask you before we take a quick break is this. When your mom was nudging you in the direction of becoming an artist, why did she do that? I mean, what did she see in you? Was it just something she had a feeling? Did she ever give you a reason why that she tried to push you in that direction?
Well, like you say, the lady she had hired to take care of me or stay with me, she had just been through, this whole course and was studying to be an artist. So she said, "Well, this perfect opportunity. What could be better than having somebody right here with us every day?" So that was definitely part of it. And like I said, I always had been creative and always been. My hands were always busy as a child, so I guess it was a natural progression, perhaps. But yeah, yeah. But my mom's very wise too. She's a very wise woman, so she's on it usually.
Well, and part of the reason I asked that is because I would love our viewers to be able to take something away from this piece, and really this ends up, this stretches your entire journey. And the fact of it is that you were creative, and your hands were always busy. So it does kind of make a natural extension into, okay, why don't we take the next step and do something creative with our hands, and that would be art. So that does make perfect sense. Part of the reason I ask is because, like I said, I was hoping for you to be able to take something away so that if they have kids, they can learn that difference between what is pushing them in the wrong direction and trying to get them to do something they're not meant to do, or
For
push them in
sure.
the right direction to get them to do something they were meant to do. Like, I tell one of the stories I tell about myself is the fact that I was a catcher in baseball growing up, and my adopted dad always wanted to make me a pitcher. And the short version is that, and I'll tell a longer version at some point in another episode of Expert Showcase. But the short version is that one decision, had he not, I don't begrudge him for it, but had he not tried to force me to be a pitcher, and had he just really nurtured that catcher's instinct, I definitely would have gone on to, at least play high school and college ball and other things, because I was a fairly good hitter I was a really good hitter when I was a kid. So, the interesting part is that sometimes our parents know just in a direction that they want to see us go, and other times they see something in us and push that. So it sounds like she just saw something in you, and thank goodness it meshed with something that turned out to be a lifelong passion, right?
But yeah, absolutely. But you know what? My mom provided me with all this art supplies and a teacher to teach me when I was, like I say, 12, 11, 12 years old. And it didn't come to fruition for another decade. So sometimes you have to be patient. And she never pushed it on me. She said, "Here you go, give it a go." And when I said no, I wasn't interested, and those supplies sat in my cupboard for all those years, and I never went anywhere. I never did anything with it. But also an art teacher today, and I have had a lot of young students and a lot of parents doing what you're describing there. And just recently, I had a 16-year-old young girl, and the mom was very excited because she said, "You're showing my daughter that being an artist it's possible to do this as a career." And when she first said that, I kind of gasped because, like, uh, you may not want your daughter to go into this because it's on the one hand, it is the best life ever, but it's not for everybody at the same time. It's not easy, and everybody's heard the whole deal about the starving artist. Well, it's not an easy go of it, let me tell you. And there's a lot to talk about on that topic. Well, but when she first said, I'm like, "Well, you better warn your daughter. I got to talk to your daughter about what that entails. Like, it's not all like for me. There's no option but to do this. Like, that's just the way it is. Like, there's no, there have been those dark days, and I think I even sent you a note a few months back saying, "Chris, my business is never going to take off," and then the next day, like, I sold a painting, and then it was all fine again. It's like that's the life you lead. And so it's all up and down, and you have to definitely be in a certain mindset in order to be a painter for a career, because it's not the easiest career to choose in the world, that's for sure. So you need to for sure be on the, yeah.
Yeah,
So for
that
parents
is,
to push their children into one direction, it's definitely needs to, yeah, be
yeah.
in their heart and soul, I guess.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to wrap up the aftermath. Folks, we're having our discussion today with Caprice Hogg, and we've heard all about her physical challenges when she was a kid, born with muscular dystrophy and going through back surgeries and going through challenges into, a defining moment in her life, meeting somebody who's very similar to herself, and then, having parents and having people around her with the foresight and her having the ability and the foresight to listen to those eventually those nudges to get her in the direction of living to her 0 point and her life's purpose. In the second half of today's show, we're going to talk all about sharing, and she's going to share more about sharing her passion for art and life. We're going to talk about how, regardless of what you're doing, how you have to persevere and what she's done to be able to persevere, and how you have to trust your gut and what she's done to be able to trust her gut, and how, it's not always easy and how she's gotten through it. And even if you're not an artist, if you're a coach, a consultant, you need to stick around and watch the second half, because as you should have just heard, and if you're just joining us now, where have you been? Rewind, watch the first half of the episode, and what you're going to find out is that as an artist and as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, what Caprice has to say is closely tied and closely aligned and will help you succeed in your business and life. So give us about 30 seconds and we'll be right back. Raise your hand if you could use more clients. Now keep those hands up if you know that the best, most efficient, most effective way to attract your ideal client is to create great client attracting content that connects with your ideal client and makes it easier for you to convert them into paying clients. Now, whether you have your hands up or have your hands down, I invite you to join me on the Create, Connect, and Convert Online Summit. It's where I and other people who are real-world practitioners of creating great client-attracting content are going to share our secrets with you. The summit is online. It runs Wednesday, April 13th through Saturday, April 23rd. You need to go out to the web address on your screen at this point, register to reserve your seat. And remember, you want to join us on the Create, Connect, and Convert Online Summit, because creating content is how you spread your message, reach more people, and make a bigger difference. We're back on Expert Showcase. Today we have Caprice Hogg. This has been an epic first half of the show. We've heard all about Caprice's heroine's journey, where she came from being born with muscular dystrophy to having back surgeries to going through meeting someone who was very similar to her and just having a great well of emotions come out, and then leading into some feathers and some 2x4s into getting her to be the epic artist that she is today. If you're just joining us now, go back and watch the first half of Caprice's episode. You'll be glad you did. So Caprice, this is our expert focus segment of today's show, and this is all about sharing a passion for art and life. And for those of you who aren't artists, stick around and listen, because from reading what Caprice has and from talking to Caprice, I know this is all going to be applicable to you, or at least, if not all, at least one thing from each of these segments is going to be applicable to you. So Caprice, give us a really quick overview of what we're going to be talking about here today.
Well, I just thought I would give a quick rundown about what it's like to be a painter and do it as a career, how I managed to survive for all these years, down the line. It's been a big learning curve, and for me personally, I've done things a little bit different than a lot of my artist friends have done, and so I just thought I'd share with you a little bit about what it's like to be in my business, and a little bit, how the different route I chose to take rather than going into galleries and whatnot, and instead I decided to open my own gallery, and I sell primarily right out of my studio and online, and the different avenues that I chose to take.
And that is so epic. And part of the reason, once again, folks, I'm going to repeat, even if you're not an artist, you want to stick around, because as you just heard, Caprice has done things her own way. And if you're a coach or consultant, a lot of times you're going to hear all all of this stuff out there telling you the exact right way to do this or the exact right way to do that. We've got somebody sitting in front of you who's become an epic success, who's made her mark in this world, and who's done it her own way. And there's definitely going to be things you're going to be able to learn from in this segment. So we're going to talk all about persevering, trusting your gut, and the fact that it's not always easy. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start off with persevering. When we talk about persevering, tell us a little bit about, how you have persevered through your own business to this point.
Well, like I say, it's not an easy business being a painter, and I know right now it's economic hard times for a lot of people. I think it's, in both Canada and the U.S., we're all in a very bad economic situation with the economy and whatnot. And so with things like art, I think those are one of the things that can kind of be eliminated from a lot of people's spending. It's kind of, but on the other hand, it's one of those avenues where it really brings peace and comfort to a lot of people. Something like an original painting, there's nothing in the world quite like it. It's like music is like that, and it brings comfort to people. And it's one of those things that I know is an important part of my life. It's not a part of everyone's life, but once you get into the art world, there's no turning back. It's kind of, it's something that has to be there, or I'm not a fulfilled person if I don't have art in my life. And so that's kind of one of the things I like to share with people that are in my realm and that I connect with, is just the importance of art and how it can really have such a dramatic impact on your life. But as far as being in business and trying to sell art, that's a whole different ball of wax. And as I mentioned in the early part of the show, my parents had always been in business, so I learned a lot about marketing and how to do sales and all that things from the time I grew up. And then when I met my original art teacher, she said, selling art is like selling nothing else. And I'm like, oh, don't be silly. It's just selling, a product, and it's not. It's a whole different world, and I now realize that it has to be, sold in a different way. And I even, a couple of years ago, I took I studied with a business coach, and even her way of selling and, working, I had to tweak it into a different bit of a world. And I think even in the social media and business applications, it is definitely a different ball of wax altogether. So I've kind of now figured out the different little ways that work for me, at least, and it's been a big learning curve. And the social media marketing is something that's totally brand new world, as you are well aware of, Chris. And but I think some parts of it are definitely the same as for any other business, and that you've definitely got to connect with your customers and your clientele and just get personal. And for me, that was a big challenge, is to put myself out there, because for a lot of years it was my belief that you should buy a painting or buy a piece of art because you respond to the painting, that you respond emotionally to the painting, and the artist themselves should never have anything to do with it. And the woman that first taught me, Karen, she said, don't, have people buying your art because you're in a wheelchair, or buying your art because you're a woman, or any of that stuff. You want it to stand on its own. And I really, really believe that. And then a few years later, one of my other mentors had passed away, and I went to his studio shortly after he had died. And I went into his studio with all of his last paintings, and I had the box of Kleenex with me, and I knew I was gonna be all emotional and upset, and then I wasn't, because Keith was all around me. And it made me look at my own work in a totally different way, and I realized how much of me actually winds up in my paintings. So then that gave me a different perspective as to when I'm trying to sell my paintings, that I have to kind of sell myself first as well, because if people like me, then there's a chance they're going to like my paintings as well, and they will respond emotionally to the paintings if they're responding to me. So then that kind of shifted, and I had to sort of not be quite so shy, and I had to start putting my face out there and putting my personality out there, and my love and my passion for art had to suddenly be in the forefront. And I think that was a big turning point in my my business career, is when I was allowed people to actually see who I am.
Epic. So folks, normally I do a whole recap and everything. Here's what I want to say. If you haven't resonated yet with the fact that Caprice's business of being an artist is the same as your business of being a coach or consultant, go back and watch the last 4.5 to 5 minutes of this video, because what Caprice has just told you is the same struggle that every coach and every consultant goes through. I want my material to stand on my own. I'm not really, they start off saying, "Oh, I want my material to stand on its own," and it shouldn't be emotional between myself and my clients. And I say, horse pucky. I mean, bull. The fact of the matter is the fact that you want the people to resonate with you. Yes, you need your content and your coaching to deliver epic value and change people's lives. But the heck with the content. People need to resonate with, people need to resonate with you and want to be in your world. And Caprice, from an art standpoint, one real quick thing about that and resonance, uh, is there, without getting too deep into the story, has there ever been a time where you looked at a painting and been like, I kind of don't like it, and you found out who the artist was, and it fundamentally changed the way you actually viewed that particular painting? Can you ever pick that? And if it hasn't, that's fine, but can you ever pick out a time where that's happened for you?
Uh, well, in a way, yes, because when I was in Italy a few years ago, our friend had arranged for me to go to an entire Caravaggio exhibit. And I knew Caravaggio and I knew his work, but I never really paid much attention to him. And I didn't know we were even going to this exhibit. And then we just got out of the car and here we were. And I didn't know that's where we were going. And I walked in and, or wheeled in, I guess. And there was this one painting on the wall of Caravaggio's, and it was a painting of the Romans taking Christ away to be crucified. And I am not a Catholic, and I'm not particularly religious, and I saw that painting, and I got so emotional, and it was totally a shock to me because it wasn't the subject matter, and it wasn't even the artist, but it was just, the painting was just overwhelming to me, and it came as such a surprise. And I think that is one of the magic things about art, is that you never know when something like that is going to hit you, and it can happen at the most unexpected time, so and that's what I love. And the same thing happened to me, like it's happened to me multiple times. When I was at the Vancouver Art Gallery, there was an Andy Warhol painting, and I didn't like Andy Warhol. I had nothing good to say about Andy Warhol, and then I saw his Marilyn Monroe, and it was overwhelmingly extraordinary, and I just couldn't take my eyes off of it. And I've never seen, something, it was just brilliant. And so then that changed me forever. And I'm still not the hugest fan of Andy Warhol paintings for all of them, but he's definitely got extraordinary pieces. And seeing them in real life rather than in a book makes a big difference too. But you never know when that's going to hit you, and that's one of the thrills of fine art for me.
Yeah, and I think what you brought up there is very, very important and very critical. The fact of the matter is that, we can change our opinions about people, even if we're not particular fans, if they make a change in our life. And then going forward, we can view them and their material different. So the whole point is that, yes, your content, whether you're an artist, a coach, a consultant, your content needs to be good, and it needs to change. It definitely needs to change, people's lives. Fact of the matter is that they're also, if they have that connection with you, they're going to look at your content a little bit differently. Just like you said, you weren't a big fan of Andy Warhol, but now after that one piece of content changed your opinion, now at least you have a different respect and a different, association for the rest of his work. So
Sure.
before we get into trusting your gut, as far as perseverance, what's one tip, trick, or hint you can give our audience when it comes to persevering through those lean times, that regardless of whether you're an artist, a coach, a consultant, a business owner, an entrepreneur, that you'll always go through?
Well, for me, it's all been about choosing exactly what it is I want. And for me, passing up my art, which there have been many, many times that I'm thinking, this is never going to come to fruition. It's like, flogging a dead horse. I read in some business magazine that it's time to shut your business down when, and I had hit all those points, and I'm like, I got to get my head examined because this is never going to come. But for me, there were so many parts. A, to think, the thought of not painting didn't work for me, and B, I have so many people that have bought my paintings over the years and have written me, checks with their hard-earned money, and the thought of suddenly not being in business and letting those people down was too much for me to handle. And that was a big part of it, because my clients are very important to me as well, and the people that have had faith in me, and some of my teachers have all come out to my art shows, and I've had opening nights where it's just been packed, and then now the thought of not continuing on, it just wasn't an option for me. So those are the things that kind of kept me going. And my family, who have been here to support me, and there have been all those days where I haven't been making it as an artist, but because I've been with my family, I was able to stay at it, so there's definitely, yeah,
Epic.
yeah.
There's some epic gold right there, folks, especially you go back and you realize, I guess the biggest thing I'll bring out of all that, and if you don't have something to write down or type with, go get something, pause this, rewind a little bit, and listen to what Caprice just said. The biggest piece of epic gold I can pick out of there was the fact that when you think about not doing what you're doing, and your brain just says, nope, I can't see it, that's one of the ways that tells you might need to find a different way of doing it, but it tells you that you need
For
to
sure.
persevere and keep going. So let's go ahead and get into trusting your gut. So when you talk about trusting your gut, we're talking about, I guess about intuition and that sort of thing. When you're talking about trusting your gut, what are you talking about here? And go ahead and give us an example of where this has benefited you in your business.
Well, as I touched briefly a few minutes ago about how the route that I took was a little different than a lot of my people that I know who are painters, because a lot of them will go and send their work to a art gallery and have the art gallery on consignment sell their paintings. And generally speaking, art galleries here in Canada at least take between 40 and 50% commission. And I tried that route. I did, and it wasn't my way at all, because for one thing, depending on, and I want to be very, very clear in that this is not the way for all, but some art galleries, some people in the art business, it can tend to be a bit snobby. Not all across the board, I want to say that, but from my experience there, I've had a few experiences in the snobby art world, and most people will know what I'm talking about, I think, because yeah. So I don't want to harp on that, but I have had that experience, and some art galleries would say, okay, I want you to paint this particular size, and I want you to only paint trees. I don't want any mountain paintings. I want you to do this, that, and the other. And it was just not my personal way. And so then I had to kind of find my own way in the world, and that's when I kind of took over my house and the whole front part of my house, and was transformed into my art gallery. And then I've had other business owners in town tell me that I will never be able to sell fine art from my house. You can't do that in a home business. And I'm like, yes, I can. Just watch me, And so, and for me, it works out perfectly, because being in my situation, and it made it much easier for me to get up in the morning and just go to work by going to the front of the house. And it was about, to be successful in business, one of the things that everyone says is you have to find your own niche. And for me, to have people be able to come in to right where I'm working in my studio gallery, and they see my paints, and they see my palette, and they see the pieces I'm working on, because I usually have several paintings on the go all at once, and then today, I swap it out for a different painting, and I'm bouncing all over. That's my way of working. And they love to see the mess of my brushes all in use and everything. And they come in, and I've got a couch in my studio gallery there, and they sit down and they give them a cup of tea, and then, you know, an hour later they're like, I really have to have that painting that's hanging there, you know. So that's just kind of my way of doing it. And it's, I've when I started, I'd never heard of anybody else doing it that way. So it worked for me, and it's not going to work for everybody, but that's my way of doing it. And for me, the other thing that's really paid off is that I love to do commission work for my clients. And so a lot of times they'll come in and they'll talk to me about what they want, and they've been wanting a painting for a particular wall or a particular size, or sometimes they just they actually have a photograph. And I recently did one of for a client from Winnipeg, and it was of her mother's garden, which it was the house that they'd grown up in. And, you know, her parents are elderly now and still in the house, but she wanted this memory of her mother's garden. And so I did that on a nice large canvas, and they loved it. And it was something that was very special to them. And so for me, that's been one of my biggest ways to make a living, is through doing this commission work. And I love it because I get to know my clients very well and very personally. And it's just, there's nothing better than seeing their faces when they come in and see their painting finished. And so for me,
Yeah.
that's really paid off.
See, and I think it's interesting. So when we talk about trusting your gut, you had a vision of a different way of doing your business, and you went out and you made it happen. That's applicable to everybody watching. You know, there's a lot of people who will tell you that you can't run a coaching business this way, or you can't run a consulting business this way, or, you know, you can't run a restaurant this way, you can't do this that way. And, you know, if you trust your gut and you have a good idea, and it's the idea that you were meant to have, then it's going to be successful. You know, there's in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, there's a very small hot dog stand that's been around for 50 years. Yes, I said a hot dog stand that's been around for 50 years. They sell one thing and one thing. Yeah, I think they might sell fries now, but they sell hot dogs.
Right.
And, you know, I can't stress this enough, because it's kind of this bizarre concept of how can you
Yeah.
make any money? Well, they've supported two families, multiple generations, and been in business over 50 years just selling hot dogs. And it's like, you know, you're going, but they trusted their gut that that was what was going to be applicable. The other thing I want people to focus on, and I want our viewers to focus on, is something he said towards the end, because it's why trusting your gut and building your business in the way you want to build your business and with the clients you want is so critical. You notice how Caprice said that she loves the commission work. Well, the great part about it, Caprice, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the clients have come to you originally and they bought paintings in a certain style that they've liked. When they
Right.
come back, do you, I'll say ever, at least at first I'll say ever, do you ever get somebody who comes back to ask you to paint a painting that you aren't happy about, that you don't like, that isn't a style you'd want to use, that isn't a palette you'd want to use, isn't, you know, that sort of thing? Does the question make sense? Because I'm babbling a little bit here.
It does make sense. And I've got a perfect story that I think this again goes back to trusting your gut. And doing a lot of painters that I know, they refuse to do commissions because of that very thing. They're worried that if the client doesn't like it, then they're stuck with this painting that they can't sell at the end. And for me, that's never been an issue, because the majority of people that have come to me have all brought me things I could definitely turn around and sell to somebody else. So the commission work I do is generally a landscape, like it's in the vein of paintings that I already do. And but as an example of what you're saying, there was one painting, and there's this big, huge mountain. I don't know, have you ever heard of Banff, Alberta, here in Canada? It's one of the big tourist zones here, up here in Canada. And it's a beautiful mountain area. And there's one very famous mountain called Castle Mountain, and I've been asked to paint it several times. And mountains is my what I love to paint. And this one lady asked me to do her painting of that particular mountain. And it is a very solid, rugged, kind of dramatic mountain. And it's just, it's huge and it's very iconic and everybody knows it. So if I don't get it just right, people are going to know that I screwed it up. So it's one of those things that you really have to get right. And I've always done it in really dramatic colors and oranges and reds and yellows and really, in your face colors. And then when this one particular lady asked me to paint it for her, the next thing I know is I'm painting it in all these pastel soft pinks and yellows, real soft, really, and my mom actually came in one day and she said, "What happened to your palette? Why are you painting it like that?" And I'm like, "Just came out, it just happened. This is where I'm at, I guess. I don't know, I can't explain it." She's like, "Well, that's so bizarre." I'm not a pastel type of person. And so it was very unusual for me to paint in that theme. And so then I finished the painting and we delivered it to her, and the first thing the lady says is, "Oh my goodness, that's absolutely perfect. I am so glad you didn't use oranges and reds because I can't stand oranges and reds." And she never told me that. And she's like, "Oh, the palette, the paints are just, the colors are just perfect for me." And she was a very soft, gentle person. And so that was kind of when I realized that, yeah, this is kind of my way, because I've got this ability to kind of tune into each client and know what it is they like. And I've had the same sort of experience where this one lady asked me to paint the view from their cottage, and they asked me to, they're on Thanksgiving weekend, and she told me she absolutely hates yellow. And we looked out over the lake with the mountains and all the yellow trees, and she said, "Don't put any yellow anywhere in the painting." I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me, lady." And she wrote this whole long list of notes of what she wanted in this painting, and I just kind of, don't tell her, but I kind of tossed the list of notes away, and I just did this painting. And of course there was yellow in it because that's all there was in the view. And she just went insane when she saw the painting, and she kept hugging me and telling me how perfect it was. And so I don't disrespect their wishes, but there are just times when I just know this is what they're looking for, and it's a matter of the whole trusting your gut thing. And so, yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of,
And those
yeah,
are great examples of trusting your gut. And what makes that work, I believe, is knowing your clients and attracting your ideal clients. And that's part of the whole trusting your gut thing that I was going to get into, or at least that I was leading to, was the fact that whether you're an artist, a coach, a consultant, if you get your ideal clients, if you trust your gut, if you persevere to the beginning and you get your ideal clients, then it's much easier to be in business and um, do things your way, and people are going to, like it. Where if you don't have your ideal clients, then it kind of leads us into the not always being easy. I mean, there's definitely other things, but we're going
right,
to wrap up trust your gut and get into it's not always easy. And to segue, when you're trusting your gut, it's much easier to trust your gut when you've got an ideal client in front of you. But when you're taking on clients that, like you were talking about, when they only wanted to paint trees, and they're, the things that are so restrictive, then it makes it much more difficult, and it makes it even less easy, so to speak. So in the vein of it's not always easy, tell us a little bit about how it hasn't always been easy, and what you did to kind of get through that.
well, like I said, for me, it's been a blessing to have my gallery out of my home, because there's a lot less expenses, and I can write off a lot of the business costs and whatnot in my phone and internet and all these sorts of financial little technicalities that kind of add up into big things, because then all of a sudden I don't need to sell quite as many paintings as if I had had a actual gallery space downtown, and with a ton more expenses. And so there's all the financial aspects, and the whole bit about attracting your ideal client. That's, I live in a small town, and it's a tourist town. We get a lot of golfers here, and I'm 5 minutes away from the ski hill, and we have a ton of tourists. And then, when the bad economy hit, then all of a sudden the tourists kind of didn't start coming. They weren't coming as often as they had been, and so then sales took a nosedive. And in the art business especially, it's a roller coaster. So I think a lot of people experience that in their businesses, but when it comes to art and with I only sell original paintings, so it's not like I've got like all the other knickknacks and things to sell and alternate ways of making a living. So, it's a lot of it's about sacrificing and being willing to just do with less. And for me, it's not ever a sacrifice because art's what I love. So but that's not for everybody. It's not a lifestyle that everybody can handle. I'm a bit of a hermit, so I don't have a lot of a social life, and I don't, go out a lot because I just want to be at home and with my books and my paintings and doing my thing. So for me, that works, but that's not necessarily the way for everyone.
But it really illustrates the fact of, even when we say it's not easy, I mean, let's face it, being an entrepreneur is not easy. Being a business owner is not easy. Being a coach, a consultant is not easy. However, when you look at it and go, this is what I love to do, it's kind of like goes back to, I used to do work with people, I call finding your 0 point now. Originally started off in the passion realm, and there was questions like, what do you love to do? What makes you cry? What makes you laugh? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? Dig down deep into where things need to go. But granted, while I guess let me make this short. What I really want to pick out of there is that it is, while you said it right. It is a sacrifice, but it doesn't feel like a sacrifice because it's it's what you love to do and what you want to
Right.
do. And it's whether it's painting or whether it's running a business, there's definitely going to be ups and downs. So what do you when that happens, when the down times happen, when it's not always easy, give our audience something that you go through to help get you through those times.
Well, as I said, took a study with a business coach a few years back, and that got me into the whole social media thing. And it's about change and keeping up with the times and having to put myself out there and doing, and that's another bit about the whole challenging part for me is because I want to be in the studio painting, and now I spend quite a lot of time sitting here at the computer doing the Facebook and the newsletters and all the emailing and all. So there are days when I get totally overwhelmed with the whole business end of things, and then I'm not painting, and so then there's this whole juggling act that I try to even out, and so that I don't think I've quite got a handle on that whole equilibrium yet, because I definitely would like to be spending more. If people ask me all the time, do you paint every day? And I'm like, no. As much as that would
Well,
be nice,
I
and
yeah, I was going to ask you a
yeah,
real quick question. You say no, and then you say it would be nice. If you Was there ever a time in your life where you did paint every day?
I would say yes. And then, but there too, it's important to get away from it as well. Like this, we recently were just painted the studio and the hallway and everything, so I couldn't be in there painting because we had all this construction going on. And so then once it was over, it's like, yes, I get to go in there, and then all the paint was just flying. So I think there's it's a catch-22, because if I was in there painting every day, I don't think the excitement, the ideas, and then having forced to be away from it is beneficial too. So there is that as well. So
Yeah, and that's what I
yeah,
was,
and then
and I'm glad you said that because that's what I was kind of hoping you'd say, to get people to understand, look, you can have a passion for a business. You can love to do something and you can think you'd want to do it every day. But one of the things that makes it easier to be able to do it and be a success is the fact of not letting yourself get burned out and not, doing something every single day, until you eventually get bored with it. Now, I know there's some people watching who are going to say, I'd never get bored with it. I do this every day. And to those people, great. I applaud you. It is epic that you can do that. I know for me personally, there's things I've loved in my life. There's things that I've loved, beyond anything else as far as things go. And I know eventually there has to be there has to be some sort of break. I mean, I remember I was a very good bowler many years ago, and it was like watching bowling and going bowling, and everything was bowling, bowling, bowling. But after a while, there has to be some sort of, there ends up having to be a mental break, or you get kind of tired and worn, you get tired and worn down by it, right?
well, and the other side of the story is that I do love to talk about art, and so today I'm sitting here talking with you, and so that's a totally different avenue of being able to talk about my art, and I'm thoroughly enjoying being here instead of at my easel today. So this is exciting as well. So I love to be able to share my art and share my love of art with people. So on that aspect, doing the social media part and the business end and being in touch with my clients, that's an exciting part of the whole business as well. So it's a toss up between the two of them, and I think there is an equilibrium between both sides, and I do enjoy both sides. So it's just, yeah, I think that's all, and it makes, I think doing things like this today, talking to you, is going to make my painting better. So yeah,
Epic. So see,
yeah.
since you love talking about art so much, we have to create a show for you around what was that guy with the big afro, the hair? What was the
Yes. Um,
oh,
oh, his name just left me.
but you know who I'm
His
talking about. It was the
oh, geez, it just left with
was
the
it
happy little trees.
it's Bob something or other? What wasn't
Oh,
it?
oh
Let's see,
man,
let's see if we
it'll come
can
to me in a minute.
let's see if we can find it real quick. Artist. I bet you if I did artist, people watching the show are gonna be like, what is he doing? But I want to find this.
Everybody knows what you're talking about. Yeah.
Funny hair. There we go. That might actually bring it up. Nope, it didn't. What a bummer. I figured, hey, that would be, man, I'm gonna, he was on PBS. I thought it
He
was,
was.
oops,
Oh.
Bob Ross. That's it. It was Bob Ross.
Bob Ross, that's it.
Hey,
Yeah,
we
that's the
need good
one.
SEO
There
on the
you go.
show.
Let's do it.
But so yeah, so
Let's do it.
we need to create the Caprice Hogg show where you just nice calm voice and just like just nice and just
That's
painting
been
and
in the back of my mind. I've been telling you I've been needing to get into video.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Caprice, I think
On
that's
my
it.
to-do.
Exactly, and I think that's an epic way to kind of wrap up this show for today, folks. If you want to stay in touch with Caprice, which you should after seeing this, I'm gonna put her website. She's got a newsletter there. capriceartstudio.com/newsletter-archive.html. It's on the screen. I just love reading things. Caprice is an epic person, epic artist. You need to go out. There's going to be a link to her website in the show notes. You need to go out and check out her art. Like I said, I was thoroughly amazed when I went out and checked out. Caprice and I have been talking for a while, and I admit, Caprice, I went out and just right before you asked about the show, I went out and checked the art. I should have done it sooner, but I'm sorry. But fact of the matter is, once I saw the site and saw the art, I was thoroughly amazed. She's an epic artist. As you can also tell, she's an epic person, and she's got a lot of great information. And I'm a big believer in that we can learn from people that aren't in our industry and apply things to our industry to make our lives and our businesses better. So whether it's that you want to buy some art for Caprice, whether it's you want to reach out to her and just be in touch with her, follow her on social media, see what she's doing. After being with her for over an hour today, you should be able to tell by now that she's got some great information to share with you, not only from an art perspective, but little tips and tricks that she can help you, from a business standpoint. And I know, Caprice, you aren't a business coach and everything. I'm just doing this in a vein of sharing it and learning from each other, because I'm sure there's people who will be able to bring and add value to your life. So Caprice, and by the way, folks, if you're just joining us now, I have to ask again, where have you been? It's okay. Go back and watch the hero's journey. Learn how someone who was born with muscular dystrophy, had back surgeries, and went through a lot of challenges, went through something very emotional that opened the floodgates and took her and led her down the path, and hear how she had these feathers going on throughout her entire life, that she should be an artist, but it wasn't until a major 2x4 hit that she was able to start embracing that inner artist. And it's the same way with you. Maybe you've got a feather for being a coach or a consultant, or maybe a TV show host, and it isn't until you get some big hit upside the head that you realize, okay, now I've got to do it. So folks, Caprice, thank you again for being such an epic guest on today's show. Before I roll on out of here, is there any last words of wisdom you want to leave our audience with today?
I just want to thank you a lot, Chris, for having me on, and I've been really glad that we've connected, and thanks for doing the great work you're doing.
You're welcome. Thank you again for being an epic guest. Thank you, viewers, for being epic viewers. And until we meet again, make it an epic day.